I'll personally reach out, message, text, WhatsApp people all over the world all the time. That's my job, and that's also the joy of it.
I find that I genuinely get along better with people that are well traveled, that have lived in different places, and that you can appreciate the cultures and all of the unique complexities that different areas in the world have to offer. So when a friend of mine on Facebook said, "You gotta meet my friend Lori. She's an awesome realtor. She's been around the world. She's settled now, but she's been absolutely killing the market in Maryland." I said, "I need to talk to this woman." So Lori Rogers, welcome to the show today.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, I have lived all over, and here I am in Frederick, Maryland now. Yeah, thank you.
So let's just start. I mean, where did you come from? You've been all over, and how did you end up in Maryland?
So I'm originally from South Africa. And my husband is British. We met there, lived in Cape Town, moved from there to London, spent time there, and both worked for a multinational. So we were hired into Denver, which was quite a change going from London to Denver. Very exciting. And from there, ended up here in Frederick, Maryland, where we decided to stay. Yeah.
So I mean, you've lived in a lot of different houses.
Yes.
What would you say excites you the most about the housing market? Where you are right now.
So the housing market here is just such a lovely blend. I don't know how many people are familiar with Frederick in Maryland. It's about an hour and a quarter north of Washington, D.C. We have this wonderful environment of beautiful historic homes, beautiful historic farms. Um, and I mean, I live on a beautiful lake. We obviously have all the modern houses as well, beautiful developments like, modern condos downtown in our historic district. So it's a wonderful mix, but because we have that historic aspect, we also have those beautiful old properties here as well.
I mean, that's so interesting because so many areas of the country have, your urban condos and your high rises. You have lake properties, you have farm properties, you have historic properties, and then the mix of clients you have is interesting as well because you're so close to Washington D.C.
Yeah.
and so close to a couple of the US's big tech hubs, but you're also just far enough away where that's not all of the business.
That's right, because we have space here. I mean, obviously, development takes place everywhere, and there are new developments every year that go up around Frederick. It's one of those places that's often mentioned as a great place to live. Yes, and historic downtown is very important. Historic farms, very beautiful. But we also have, obviously modern developments all around here. So it's quite a mix. Yeah.
So, as a realtor, how do you market to an audience that they're all so different, right? Not only is the type of homes you're marketing very diverse, but also the types of people that are buying those homes are different. How would you say, you've been in the business for 16 years, how have you gained knowledge of such diverse housing stock and clientele?
So, I mean, obviously, you have to be quite versatile going from one to the other. So, it depends on how you're building your database. So, my database is very personal to me. So, I'm less about advertising and much more about reaching into who each person is that I work with. So, for me, most of the people I work with, I knew originally or they've been introduced to me. Very, very seldom that I just meet someone randomly unless it's at an open house. And then I have to say, if I'm at an open house and it's an historic home and people are walking in because they want to see an historic home, that I would guess then that's their interest. And obviously through conversation, I will take it from there. Most of my marketing is very specific towards whatever that person is interested in. So sometimes you'll see people saying, I only want an historic property downtown Frederick or downtown Mount Airy or downtown Newmarket or something. And then that is where I'm going to focus that attention. I don't do huge amounts of paid advertising where I'm blanketing anything. I've really got my niche markets down. If, like at the moment, I've got a very modern condo on the market downtown Frederick. It's in the middle of the historic area, but it's a new construction. And I'm focusing that on people who want condos, modern living, but downtown with historic as an environment, but not to live in.
Well, I really love that because when we think about the landscape that frankly we're in today as real estate professionals, there's 10 million real estate websites out there where customers can search for homes, but most of them don't yet have the ability to let people search by what's the style or vibe, right? Like you can't always search for just historic homes versus a
Yeah.
modern home in a historic area. In fact, like I don't think there's any website right now that lets you search for modern high rises in historical neighborhoods. And so when you think about the value that a realtor can offer today, it's being able to specifically get the right homes in front of the right people based on those personal relationships that you have.
That's right, and that's why, and I've mentored agents in the past, and I do, do some teaching in the office and that type of thing, and basically, I think it's really important. There are different models in this business, and they all work. Let me start by saying they all work. There are people out there door knocking every day. There are people that are cold calling. I have huge admiration for them. The way I run my business is I really want to get to know that person really, really well. So I want to know what's important to that person. What are they looking for? What's going to enhance their life? What's important to them? And then also when I'm introduced to someone, because most of my client base is not from someone I don't know, it's from an introduction or through a society or through some charity I'm involved with. Then I'll ask I'm asking the questions over and over and over. What's important to you? What is your lifestyle? Do you have pets? Do you have children? Is the schooling area important? So very targeted to looking at what exactly does that person want.
Well, it's interesting because I hear everything that you're saying reminds me of, past conversations I've had with these ultra luxury agents that are selling, the $10 million up type properties because that is the type of service that's usually been expected in that market. I mean, you're selling homes that are pretty, pretty normal and tracking the national average. What would you say is the average home price right now in your market?
So the average home price here is probably just under 500,000. So around 480, something like that at the moment. Yeah.
And then what is luxury considered in New
So luxury is just over 600, 600 to 650,000 is the top 10% of the market. We're very early in the season, so we're kind of trying to figure out where we're going from here. For me, there's that lovely saying, luxury is not a price point, it's an experience. It's something Brady says in Keller Williams all the time.
Yeah.
And I totally believe that. I work a lot, believe it or not, I work a lot with first time buyers. Remember, first time buyers are getting into their first property. Absolutely love doing that. The excitement of it, that first step into real estate. And then, it's not many years, and all of a sudden we're looking at upgrading, or we're looking at buying a farm, or, I've got a horse now. I want to be out in the countryside. If you treat everyone with the same respect for what they want, your business will grow because people know you care.
Well, right. I mean, at the end of the day, most realtors aren't doing, not you, obviously, and not a lot of people that we interview on this show, but most realtors aren't actually doing that many total sales. Right? We really are more of a one-on-one type industry where, that client might be a realtor's main work for the entire month that they're working on. And so when you think about the experience that it's paramount to give to a customer these days, whether you want to call it a luxury experience or not, it's one-on-one dedicated service where you have to put the time in to understand their needs and then look at the homes that are coming out and saying which ones are a fit for me to send to them where it's not going to make me look like I wasn't paying attention in the first place. And if you just think about the basics of a first-time home buyer, every home is a luxury home to a first-time home buyer because they're shelling out hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, imagine you were going to the mall and you had 100 grand to spend. You'd be considered a luxury buyer in any category. But in real estate, I don't know why we've said luxury is a million plus or luxury is some certain price point. When at the end of the day, every home is a major ticket item purchase.
And it is. It's a very joyful event for most people. I mean, obviously, when you're working with people who are going through a divorce or something, there's lots of sensitivities involved there. But it's also very important that you assist through that process. But I have a lovely story. When I first started, one of my swim mom connections at the time contacted me, and she said she was almost apologetic, and she said, "I really want to see this." Particular property. It was literally listed at 65,000. I was a brand new agent and I thought, "Oh, absolutely, I'd love to show it to you." Within a couple of hours, she sent me 2 more in the same area, and they were all between that 65, $75,000 range. So we went to have a look at them, and I had no idea what the motivation was or where she was going with this. As we drove away, she said, "Thank you so much for showing them to me." I said, "It's my absolute pleasure." And she said, "I want all 3." There's the lesson for you. So the price point was low. She wanted all 3. We have done 15 properties together, including, buying, selling. She was building an investment portfolio, and we built a luxury home for her and her family at the same time. So never underestimate who you're working with.
Well, and that's so true because I have an agent who's a dear friend of mine in our area, and he got a call for a guy from a guy on Zillow. He has no idea how he found my friend, but wanted to see a $20,000 property that was 45 minutes away. And he had a slow day, so he did it. He's now done 15 deals with this investor,
Yeah.
and they're not all $15,000, $20,000 properties. Some of them are much bigger, but it's also the connections you get, the experience you get, the niche you build. You never know in this business, and sometimes it just makes sense to say yes.
It does, and then you end up, part of my network is also a network across, the UK, South Africa, Australia, many countries where I have clients, maybe investor clients, people who are buying and selling, and I work across the United States with agents here. So even if I work for a family here, they'll say, "Oh, my daughter's buying a property in North Carolina. Can you put me in touch with someone?" So I think you have to see this business as so much more than people just being a number and they're going to buy one property. Once you're in my database, I presume you're part of my life. So are your kids, so are your parents, so are your friends, so are your cousins, wherever they are. And I think that for me is has been so rewarding and makes every day just absolutely wonderful in this business.
So obviously you're Keller Williams, you're the national international brokerage. And I think you guys tend to do a better job than most of the referral business. But I always tell new agents when they come to meet with me that it's important to add anyone to your database who you're in a deep relationship with, regardless of where they are in the world, because everybody knows someone that's buying a house somewhere, and we have the opportunity in real estate to make a commission on that and also to help people. But I usually get a question or a pushback from these agents. They're, well, how do you market that? So, Lori, like, how do you make sure that those friends of yours who love you, but who are in California or England or somewhere else, how do you make sure that they know clearly that that you should still be their first call when they have questions about real estate?
So, I do. We have so my assistant and I, Kaylee Charles King, we have a program where we reach out to everyone. So once a month, I write a newsletter, for instance. My newsletter is very personal. It's about me, it's my family, my clients, what we're doing, where we're traveling. I try not to bore everyone. A little introduction. And I remind people that we're here as a resource. We actually have a preferred vendor list. On that list, we have lawyers, title companies, inspectors, estate planning, almost anything you can think of. And we encourage people, if you've had a great experience with someone, please forward their information to us and we'll add them to this vendor list. In these newsletters, I remind people we work all over we can help you almost anywhere where you are. I will try and help you find someone wherever you are. We're a resource for so many different things. People will say, someone asked me to track a property ownership down in New York. I'm not licensed outside of Maryland, but I took the time, I took the effort. It didn't take that long. I managed to find who the ownership was. So people have needs around real estate daily, all the time. So the newsletter is one outreach. We obviously do social media. We try and keep it all very personal. So that it's not too, sort of really want to connect in with our audience and who we're working with. But then also, on the database, I'll personally reach out, message, text, WhatsApp people all over the world all the time. That's my job, and that's also the joy of it is to be connected to everyone in my
And
life.
I can tell, like, I mean, you have, I mean, for people watching this, when we have the clips online, you had a spark in your eye when you talk about your past clients, and that's really exciting. Is so many people in sales think of clients as like a number, but I could tell you genuinely enjoy that relationship that you have with them, and I love that. I want to shift gears really quick because you
Yeah.
mentioned something before we hit record that I thought was really interesting, and that's that, you know, since the housing stock value is so different, you have luxury, but then you also have a market, an interesting market of a lot of agriculture and farms,
Yeah.
and you have found an interesting way to kind of market those properties, to owners that aren't necessarily as interested in kind of, you know, rolling up their pants and being farmers. So I'd love for you to just talk about that because I think it kind of creates an interesting conversation where not every property is going to sell to the person you think or might think it would sell to.
So, regarding the farmland around here, what I have found is a lot of people feel very connected to the earth. They like to live on space. They like to live on farmland. And so they might be a lawyer or a doctor or a surgeon or a businessman and or a businesswoman. What they want to do is they'd like to live, in say Frederick County, Howard County, Carroll County. These are agricultural bases around us here. Washington County, beautiful old farms. And many of these farms have beautiful historic properties on them, which have been, many of them restored, kept in beautiful conditions. I've been very, very lucky to market and sell, many of these. And then what happens is to keep the agricultural tax base, you have contract farmers who go around, and we've actually got a list of them. So someone comes out of DC and they say, especially during COVID, they'd say, all right, I need space. I want to live out, on the farm here or whatever. Um, we have a list of people who can come and farm that land so they keep the agricultural status going. And these people get to live on these beautiful historic farms in the area, but they don't actually personally have to farm it.
So I think what was really interesting is that you mentioned that you may have a list of all the people that are willing to farm those properties so that when you have those buyers that are interested, you're able to kind of put their fears about how am I going to maintain this property at bay because you already have that figured out for them.
That's right.
And I think that's such a huge lesson for any agent selling really any property. Whatever the potential pitfalls of that property are, what's going to stress a buyer out about a certain property, and what solutions can you give them ahead of time? Right? Like if the property is a pool and it's to a buyer that's never had a pool, make sure you have a great pool company for them. If the property's on the water and maybe they've never had a property on the water, maybe you have a great attorney who's going to help them with all of the, you know, the access rights and things like that. But I just think that's so huge. And so, for every agent listening, I would think, what are the common, you know, pitfalls you get from a buyer, and how could you answer those ahead of time and really make sure that you have someone to refer them to?
Right, and it's often, if you're on the listing side, then you think, I'm going to be putting another property on the market, for instance, in Frederick at the beginning of April. Very large, historic, quite dated, but it has so many possibilities. It could be commercial. It could be someone's grand home. It could be, has actually got three zones for electricity. It's got two kitchens already. Could be subdivided into three apartments. It could be an Airbnb. So it starts to drive where you think, who's the buyer? What's the buyer going to face? What does the buyer need when they close on this property? So that you become that resource.
You know, I really love that you just said, what could the property be? What are the options for each property? Because that again is something that I feel like we don't get as much from our buyers agents these days. You're showing someone a house, you're telling them like, here's the basics, the square footage, the price, what I think we can negotiate the price upward or downward to. But let's talk about that other piece. Even if they're not necessarily the client who's going to rent their house out, I think the client would love to know that sure, a wall could be knocked down and this could be a great multifamily home. Or hey, if you made these updates or filed this paperwork, this could also be, you know, an Airbnb. And that's such an interesting spin on it, is to tell clients what the potential that a home has, even if they're not necessarily going to do it themselves, because it just gives them more options, and more options will then give them more confidence, which I love.
No, and that's what I try to do. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about something interesting. Your location, obviously, you're really close to Washington, and that means there's a lot of government jobs by you. And there's a lot of news right now about government jobs being called back into the office, jobs being eliminated, jobs moving. What are you seeing, and how do you think that's going to affect the market, or how have you already seen that affect the market?
So, and we've gone through quite a lot of changes here in the last while. So, obviously, during COVID, when things were very shut down in the cities, we had a huge number of people moving away from Washington, D.C. and the Baltimore area into these countryside areas because they couldn't really do anything. Everything was very locked down. So all of a sudden you could work from home and technologically those advances were, came into being. And so, I mean, I'd put something up for sale in Gambrel State Forest and it would go cash to two lawyers who wanted to get out of DC. Then, as things started to open up again, more of the hybrid model of work came into being, where people only had to be in the office 2 days a week, let's say, and that was so wonderful for people who could say, "I want to live downtown Frederick, or I want to live in the countryside up here. I only have to commute into DC 2 days a week." What we're seeing now is there we have the federal layoffs that are taking place. I think that's going to show up more in probably the next month or so as those contracts wind down. And then we also have the call back to the office. So I personally know several people and friends of mine and clients of mine who are now commuting an hour and a half each way. So that's 3 hours a day out of your life. And I think that that's going to result in some changes here where people will want to move closer in, because that's quite a lot of your life. If you're going 5 days a week, 3 hours a day in a car, that's pretty intense in
Yeah, and
this
people we're probably seeing that a lot in different areas of the country. Anyone who's near a city is
yeah.
probably seeing a lot of that. So I think that almost makes the question like we need to make sure that we're in touch with our clients right now, and we need to ask the question, "Hey, what's your commute to work?" I mean, that's not the normal question that the realtor is asking someone that's a past customer, but now I think that is a great reason to reach out. Obviously, not like, "Hey, you still have a job. I heard some bad news on TV," but just getting to the point in the conversation where you can talk about things like the commute, talk about how's work going, what's new, what life changes have you had recently. You're gonna get kind of like the ammunition you need to figure out what your next move could be when communicating with that client.
Yeah, exactly. And then also when buyers come up on the weekend, because we are a bit of a weekend destination here. So they'll come up and let's say they come into an open house and they're like, well, what's it like to commute from here into DC? The last thing you want to do if you've got a long term business is try and minimize what their commute really is. Give people the options. There's a train. This is how long this train is going to take. You could also drive to Silver Spring and catch a light rail, or why don't you, use your Google Maps and figure it out at that particular time of the morning? See if you can do some sort of flexible work arrangement in terms of your hours. You want to be the resource. You always want to be the resource. The day the person signs in the title company, you want them to feel absolutely thrilled with what they've bought and absolutely thrilled with what they've sold.
And talk about I mean, let's just think about the fact that we were able to practice in real estate in 2025. We have so much data at our fingertips that we could literally, if we know where they work, once we've had a conversation, we could literally do that work for them and say, "I checked the traffic estimates at 8 a.m. every single day from this property to your place of work. It's 46 minutes door to door if you drive. Otherwise, it's a 9-minute walk to the train station and then a 3-minute walk to your building." And there's literally no reason that you couldn't have a virtual assistant pulling that information for almost for every showing that you're giving to the client. And obviously, in some areas of the country, that wouldn't be necessary, but it wouldn't cost or take a whole lot of effort for an agent to do that with all the technology that we have available today.
Yeah, because we have all this. We have all this information, so let's use it. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's add some extra value to all our customers.
Well,
So yeah,
yes, because if everything was very straightforward and very simple, they wouldn't need us anymore, right? It's the complexity, it's the added value. Are you really being a good resource? Are you really understanding what's important to the person who's working with you?
I love that. So, Lori, what changes do you see coming to your business in the next 12 months? Obviously, we've had a lot of ups and downs in the 16 years that you've been in real estate. Some things never change. You work your past client database, and you know that you're always going to be a little bit busier than the previous year. But what are you hoping to do differently or start new in the coming year?
Right. So, I mean, and obviously the whole world's talking about it, but the whole AI development, and when I talk to people, a lot of people are fearful, and a lot of people, I think, overestimate, um, embracing AI more as a replacement. I think that we have all these wonderful tools that we need to use to the best of our ability and the best of the ability for what it can accomplish. But I also think that we must never lose sight of the humanity and the personal relationships. So using AI as a tool to make us more productive or for information or to assist us in whichever way we can that makes sense is fabulous. But I do know, like, when the AI descriptions started across the MLAs, I it was just terrible because in the beginning it was great, and then they all started to sound the same. And now I think people are learning how to do this, so it's becoming better again. So I think as we go through learning phases in technology, we get better, and then and then maybe we need to consistently improve what we're doing. I also think that in this area, we're probably going to see some fairly big changes in terms of people in the private sector. I think much larger so are still going to be able to do hybrid working. And I think people who are in the federal government are actually going to be probably trying to move closer into the city centers where they need to be. So I think those are the two things that I think are going to be quite big changes in the next year in my business. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really important given that information that all of us as real estate professionals are on LinkedIn. We're reviewing what our clients do for a living, what companies they've transitioned to, and then doing our own research on what's probably happening for them so that we can figure out what is our marketing and what is our communication like need to be like for people like this, and how could this advise the content that we're putting out there on social media, on our blog, on our website, etc. Lori, this was amazing. If people have clients moving to the Maryland area or federal workers that are their clients that they need some advice of how to deal with, how could they get a hold of you?
Right. So it's Laurie Rogers. I'm with Keller Williams here in Frederick, Maryland. LaurieRogersHomes.com, or my number, if anyone could ever remember that, 301-693-8599. I would love
Lori,
to hear from you. Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you so much. Absolute pleasure.